I only opened the door because of the rain. That is the truth. If it had been a normal night in Cedar Falls, I would have walked straight past. I was tired from my shift, my feet sore, my jacket damp, my mind already at home with my 6-year-old daughter asleep in her bed. But the rain had a way of slowing everything down. It fell steady and cold, sinking into your bones, turning the streets quiet and heavy. I was halfway across the intersection when I saw her. She was sitting under the cracked awning of the old laundromat, knees pulled tight to her chest, shoulders shaking. Her hair was soaked flat against her face, her jacket thin and useless against the cold. She was not crying, she was not asking for help, she just sat there, still, like someone who had learned a long time ago that the world does not stop just because you are hurting. I stopped walking. I stayed a few steps back and spoke softly, careful not to scare her. I told her it was late and she should not be out here alone. When she looked up, her eyes were sharp and guarded, but there was something else there too. Exhaustion, the kind that goes deeper than missing sleep. She told me she did not need pity. I did not argue. I told her I had a small place with a roof, hot water, and a couch, just for the night. No questions, no payment. I expected her to say no. I expected her to tell me to leave. Instead, she hesitated, then nodded once. We walked together in silence. Not awkward silence, just empty space where words did not matter. Rain followed us all the way to my little house at the edge of town. When I opened the door, warm yellow light spilled out, and for a moment she froze, like she was not used to doors opening for her. I told her the rules gently. Shoes on the mat, couch was hers, blanket in the cupboard, bathroom on the right. I told her not to open the bedroom door because my daughter was a light sleeper. She nodded again. I set a mug of hot water on the table and left a note beside it about the landline phone. I did not ask her name. I did not ask where she came from. Sometimes kindness is quieter when it does not come with questions. That night, I lay awake longer than usual, listening to the rain tap against the window, listening for any sound from the living room. There was none. Just the steady hum of the heater and the sound of my own thoughts. In the morning, sunlight crept through the curtains, gentle and soft. I was standing in the kitchen trying and failing to make eggs when Maisie climbed onto her chair, already chatting about her dreams. The smell of burnt butter filled the room. Then I heard footsteps. She stood there, unsure, wrapped in the thin blanket, her hair still wild from sleep. Before I could say anything, Maisie turned and stared at her with wide eyes. "Are you the princess who slept on the sofa?" my daughter asked, like it was the most normal thing in the world. The girl laughed. It was a small sound, but it felt like it changed the air in the room. She crouched down and told Maisie her name was Sophie. My daughter introduced herself with pride, including her age and her job as taste tester. Sophie helped us with breakfast, even though she admitted she was not much of a cook. We burned pancakes, spilled batter, and laughed more than the food deserved. I watched Sophie as she moved around my small kitchen, careful, polite, like she was afraid of taking up too much space. Something in my chest tightened. She did not look like someone who belonged on the streets. She looked like someone who belonged somewhere but had lost a map. After breakfast, I told her about a laundromat nearby that needed help. I offered without pressure. She took a moment, then nodded. I could see it meant more to her than she wanted to admit. At the laundromat, she worked quietly, folding towels, sorting clothes, sweating under the heat of the machines. She did not complain. She did not stop. She worked like someone trying to prove something to herself. That night, when I stepped out early for my route, I noticed her shoes. They were torn and barely holding together. The next morning, I left a new pair on the porch. Simple, clean, her size. No note, except one line folded inside. If you must walk, walk without pain. She stood there holding them for a long time. I pretended not to see, but I felt it. That invisible thread pulling tighter between two lives that were never meant to meet. I did not know who Sophie really was. I did not know who her father was. All I knew was that one rainy night, I opened the door for a stranger and somehow she had already started walking into my world. Sophie stayed. At first, it was only supposed to be a few days. That was the unspoken agreement we never actually said out loud. She worked at the laundromat during the day, came home tired, her hands rough and red from soap and heat. At night, she slept on the couch, always folding the blanket neatly in the morning like she did not want to leave proof she had been there. Maisie adored her. My daughter followed Sophie everywhere, asking endless questions, telling her stories that jumped from subject to subject without warning. Sophie listened to every word like it mattered. She helped Maisie with homework, brushed her hair before bed, and learned how to make grilled cheese without burning it. Watching them together felt strange and familiar at the same time, like seeing a picture from a life I never thought I would have. Sophie never talked about her past. I never asked. But sometimes I caught her staring at her phone like it was something dangerous. Sometimes she flinched when a nice car passed too slowly. At night, when she thought everyone was asleep, she sat by the window, hugging her knees, looking out like she was waiting for something to catch up to her. One afternoon, I offered to show her my delivery route. We drove through quiet streets, dropping off clean laundry at porches and back doors. Sophie held the bags carefully, like each one mattered. At one house, a dog burst out from behind the fence, barking loud enough to tear the silence apart. Sophie jumped back, lost her footing, and fell hard onto the curb. I was out of the truck before I knew it. I shouted at the dog, grabbed Sophie, checked her ankle, her hands, her face. My heart was racing in my chest like it had almost escaped something terrible. She kept saying she was fine, that it did not hurt that much. But her eyes were wet, not from pain. Later, sitting quietly in the truck, she said something I could not forget. No one has ever been afraid of me getting hurt before. I did not know how to answer that. The next morning at the laundromat, she found the necklace. It was delicate, silver and sapphire, shining under the harsh lights like it did not belong with piles of socks and towels. I saw the moment she froze. I saw how her fingers tightened around it, like she wanted to hide it back inside herself. I asked without accusation, "That doesn't look like something you picked up on the street." She did not lie. She told me her name fully, Sophie Blake. She told me her father's name, a man whose face I had seen on billboards and business pages without ever caring, a man with money that could buy whole neighborhoods without blinking. She told me she ran away because she was tired of being controlled, watched, shaped into someone she did not recognize. She said she wanted to know who she was without guards, drivers, and expectations. I felt something crack inside me. It wasn't anger. It was disappointment, mixed with fear. Not because she was rich, but because she had not trusted me enough to tell me sooner. I had opened my home without knowing what I was stepping into. Before we could say anything more, a man walked into the laundromat. Leather jacket, phone raised, no greeting. He took her picture. He smiled when he saw her face fall. He said her father paid well for information. He said she could not hide forever. I stepped in front of her without thinking. I told him to leave. He left, but not before reminding us that doors once opened could not always be closed again. That night, I packed in silence. I sent Maisie next door to Mrs. Green, told her there would be cocoa and cartoons. I told Sophie to grab only what mattered. We did not talk about where we were going, just that we could not stay. But before we made it far, we saw the car. Black, polished, out of place on my quiet street. Her father stood there, tall and calm, like the world bent around him. He looked at my house like it was something broken. He looked at me like I was nothing at all. He spoke like Sophie belonged to him. He spoke like kindness was something only money could replace. Sophie stood straight. She told him she had never been happier than in my small kitchen with burnt toast and loud laughter. She said she finally felt seen. Her father told her feelings did not pay bills. She looked at me one last time. Her eyes were full but steady. She thanked me. Then she walked away. I did not stop her. I stood under the porch light as the car disappeared into the night. Rain starting again, soft and slow. The house felt emptier than it ever had before. Days passed. Maisie grew quiet. And then she got sick. Her fever climbed fast, dangerous. I rushed her to the hospital, holding her small body like I could shield her with my arms. The nurse spoke about deposits and costs. I counted my money. It was not enough. I felt helpless. Then I heard her voice. Sophie stood there, breathless, coat damp, eyes wild with fear. She did not hesitate. She handed over a card, told him to put everything on her. She said she was connected by heart. I watched her through tears I did not try to hide. She came back when she didn't have to. And in that moment, I knew something important. Some doors, once opened, never really close. Maisie stayed in the hospital for 3 nights. I slept in a chair beside her bed, my back stiff, my jacket folded under my head. Machines beeped softly, steady and calm, like they were promising to keep her safe while I could not. Every time she shifted or whispered in her sleep, my heart jumped. Sophie came every day. She brought soup once, then books the next time, then a small pink blanket Maisie immediately claimed as her own. She never acted like she had saved us. She never mentioned the money. She sat quietly, held Maisie's hand, listened when my daughter talked about school and butterflies and how hospitals smelled funny. One night, when Maisie finally fell asleep, Sophie and I stood in the hallway on their harsh white lights. She looked smaller there, like the walls were pressing in on her. "I didn't come back to fix things," she said softly. "I came back because I couldn't breathe knowing I'd left." I told her she did not owe us anything. She nodded, but her eyes said she disagreed. When Maisie was discharged, Sophie drove us home. She did not bring one of her father's cars. She rented a simple one, clean but ordinary. She carried Maisie up the porch steps like it was the most natural thing in the world. That night, after Maisie was asleep in her own bed again, Sophie and I sat at the kitchen table. The house was quiet. Too quiet. "I can't stay long," she said softly. "My father won't stop. He thinks this is a phase." I asked her what she wanted. She thought for a long time before answering. "I want a life where I don't feel like I'm performing all the time," she said. "I want mornings. I want ordinary problems. I want to earn things. I want to belong." Her voice shook on that last word. I wanted to tell her to stay. The words pressed against my chest, heavy and urgent. But love does not trap people. Love gives them room to choose. So I said nothing. The next morning, she left before sunrise. She hugged Maisie tight, whispered something in her ear, then stood on the porch with her bag in hand. She thanked me again, like gratitude was the only language she trusted herself with. I watched her walk away a second time. This time hurt more. Weeks passed. Life returned to routine in the way it always does, quietly, stubbornly. I went to work, Maisie went to school, the laundromat kept humming. But something was missing, and we all felt it. Maisie stopped asking when Sophie was coming back. That hurt worse than the questions ever did. Then one afternoon, an envelope appeared in the mail. No return address. Inside was a short note written in careful handwriting. "I'm trying to build a life that feels honest. I don't know where it will lead yet, but everything you showed me goes with me. Thank you for teaching me what home feels like. Sophie." I folded it and put it in my wallet. I told myself that was enough. A month later, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. It was Sophie. Her voice was steady, but tired. She told me she had confronted her father, not with yelling or running, but with clarity. She told him she was not broken. She told him money could not replace being loved without conditions. She told him she was leaving for good. He said, "I'll regret it," she said quietly. "Maybe I will, but I think regret hurts less than never choosing yourself." I did not tell her what to do. I just listened. A week later, Cedar Falls woke up under a pale blue sky, the kind that feels like a beginning. Maisie and I were in the kitchen. She was spreading peanut butter on toast, concentrating like it was serious work. I was flipping pancakes, still burning the first one, when there was a knock at the door. Soft, patient. I didn't move right away. Some knocks change your life. You feel it before you open the door. When I did, Sophie stood there. No suitcase this time, just a small bag and a smile that trembled like it was holding back tears. "I'm not asking for a couch," she said, "and I'm not asking to hide." I felt my chest tighten. "I'm asking if there's space," she continued. "Space to build something real, together." Maisie appeared beside me, already smiling like she had known this moment was coming. I stepped aside. That was my answer. Sophie did not move in like a guest. She moved in like someone planting roots carefully, respectfully. She kept working, not at the laundromat this time, but at a small bakery downtown. She came home smelling like bread and sugar, laughing when flour ended up in her hair.
Slowly, quietly, she became part of our days. Not as someone to be saved, not as someone with a secret, but as someone choosing love without armor. And one night, as we sat on the porch watching the sky darken, Sophie leaned her head against my shoulder. "I think this is what rich feels like," she said. I knew exactly what she meant. He said messages after that, long ones, angry ones, then quieter ones. Sophie read them all but did not answer right away. She was no longer running, but she was no longer afraid either. One afternoon, he showed up. No guards, no black cars blocking the street, just a single polished sedan parked a little too neatly in front of our house. When Richard Blake stepped out, he looked tired, not worn down by work, but by something deeper. Maisie was in the yard drawing with chalk. Sophie froze when she saw him, her hand tightening around mine. "I just want to talk," he said. We sat on the porch. No shouting, no threats, just words laid out carefully, like fragile things. Richard looked at Sophie and admitted he did not know how to love without control. He said he thought safety meant walls and money and plans made far in advance. He said watching her walk away had frightened him more than any business failure ever had. Sophie listened. Then she spoke calmly. She told him she loved him, but she would not live in a cage built from good intentions. She told him this was her home now, not because it was small, but because it was honest. Richard did not argue. He looked at Maisie laughing in the yard. He looked at the worn steps, the peeling paint, the open windows, and for the first time, he nodded. "I don't understand this life," he said, "but I can see that you do." That was all. He left quietly, without promises, without conditions, just space. Weeks turned into months. An idea Sophie and I talked about late at night slowly took shape. A breakfast truck. Nothing fancy, simple food, honest food. A place where people could start their day feeling seen. We used old savings, help from friends, and a small loan that scared me half to death. Maisie named it Carter's Corner, breakfast from the heart. The first morning we opened, the coffee was too strong, the sign hung a little crooked, and Maisie wore an apron that nearly dragged on the ground. But people came. Then they came back. Then they brought friends. Sophie laughed more than I had ever seen her laugh. Real laughter, easy and loud. She looked free. One evening, after closing up, we sat on the porch again. The sky was wide and soft, painted in quiet colors. Maisie leaned against Sophie's side, already half asleep. Sophie turned to me. "I used to think love was something you had to earn, something you had to be perfect for." I shook my head. "Love is what shows up on rainy nights," I told her, "and stays." She smiled, eyes shining. "I'm not leaving. Not when things get hard, not when they get boring, not when fear comes back knocking." I believed her. Later that night, after Maisie was tucked in, Sophie and I stood in the kitchen washing dishes side by side like we had done 100 times before. The window was open. Night air moved softly through the room. I stopped drying and looked at her. "This life," I said, "it isn't much." She reached for my hand. "It's everything," she said. And I knew then that opening the door for a stranger on a rainy night had not changed my luck. It had revealed my home. Because love, real love, does not announce itself with noise or money or power. It arrives quietly, soaked and trembling, asking only for a place to rest. And if you're brave enough to open the door, it just might stay.